Hello everybody, welcome to the interview. I'm speaking with Gerard Batten today for the UKIP official YouTube channel. We've been hearing a lot this week about, from Jeremy Corbyn in particular, about how he's been able to hold on to the Newport West by-election. But UKIP's had a surge of support there, hasn't it, Gerard?
Yeah, I mean, Corbyn thinks it's a success. Well, I suppose he's hung on to a Labour seat that they've had for, 95 years or so. He'd be very unhappy if he'd lost it, wouldn't he? We did remarkably well, because you've got to remember, a year ago when I took over, we were on about 1 or 2% in the opinion polls. We had no money, we were about to go bust. Membership was falling through the floor. And we've rebuilt over that period of 12 months, 13 months, and to the position now where we came third in this rock-solid Labour seat in Wales on 8.6 of the vote. And I think that's quite a credible performance. We had a remarkable team down there helping Neil Hamilton. They did a fantastic job of leafleting and canvassing. So I'm very pleased with the result. And 8.6%, people say, oh, you can't win elections on 8.6%. No, but you can lose an awful lot of people their seats on 8.6%. And if there were a general election next month, then if we can't win any seats, we're sure as hell going to lose a lot of Tories their seats and a lot of Labour their seats in marginal seats. We will cause mayhem in marginal seats, and that'll do me in the short term. We need to punish these traitors in the House of Commons, and in the long term, of course, we want to win seats, and we don't know when the next general election is going to be, but we're preparing for that.
I mean, on a national level, UKIP's polling around 8%, is it, at the moment as well? And you look at where UKIP came from its high when the referendum mania was at its peak of around 13%, and you just look, and at the moment, would you say UKIP's just rising and rising? Yeah,
I mean, the best election result we got, of course, was in the 2015 election, which I think we were on 12.6% of the vote. Well, I've got it 2/3 of the way back up there already in a real election, in a by-election, in a rock-solid Labour seat, as I said. So I don't think that's a bad achievement, considering all the difficulties that we've had over the last 13 months. Because we'd not only had the practical difficulties of losing members and money, etc. We've had the mainstream media against us, and we've had a former leader against us. So I think we haven't done bad, and we can say that this is a good achievement to build on for the future.
Speaking of the future then, obviously from May 2nd, we've got the local elections coming up. How's UKIP looking for that?
Well, this time last year, we had about 534 candidates. We're still getting the figures come in now this afternoon as I speak, but it's going to be in excess of 1,400 seats that we fight. So by the time we get to the final figure, we will have almost trebled where we were last year. And of course, what people have got to remember is these are all volunteers. You know, some people seem to think that politics is a social service. They ring up, why haven't you got a candidate in my area? I say, are you a member of UKIP? No. Have you donated to UKIP? No. Well, why do you think somebody else would volunteer to do something that you're not prepared to support? If people want democracy, they've got to contribute to it into a small way. Join a party, make a small donation. Because all of these people are doing this in their own time, where they've got leaflets to put out, they've paid for them themselves. The party hasn't got a budget to pay for their leaflets. So I think that's a remarkable achievement. I really want to congratulate those 1,400 plus people who've gone out and done this, because they actually still do believe that they want to live in a democracy, and they're prepared to stand up for what UKIP believes in.
And most of these people as well, they're local people. They're coming from typically an apolitical background. They didn't, most of these people didn't realise they wanted to do this until perhaps recently.
Yeah.
And now they're there. I mean, a lot of UKIP's support base, as we saw from something like the Leavers' Day rally, the 29th of March, when we should have left the European Union, but obviously didn't. The majority of those people who came out, may not necessarily have that much to give in terms of financial support. I mean, we've already, looking at the figures, every pound that UKIP makes in donations, they've got £500 of support coming in from, be it big business or private donors, etc. And I think UKIP's really fighting the good fight on the ground level with the working people who are doing what they can.
Yeah, I think we are the genuine People's Party. We don't have funding from big business. We don't have funding from the trade unions. We can't manufacture policies for interest groups like the other parties do. We can't sell them knighthoods or peerages, which is not something I'd want to do anyway. But we're certainly not in a position to offer anybody any inducement. Anyone that gives to UKIP does it out of pure belief. And of course, most of our donors are quite small. I've seen this over the last 25, 26 years. We get the £5 and the £10 from people who probably can't really afford it. But they do it because they believe. So every penny that we raise is given to us by ordinary people. Of course, we have the occasional larger donor, but again, they're doing it through belief. We can't give them anything. We can't give them any inducement to vote for us. So that's, again, is a remarkable achievement. And of course, as I said, Labour, Tories, they rely on vested interest groups of one kind or another to actually fund them. No political party except UKIP actually exists on the money from its own members.
Speaking of the membership though, we did obviously run the Leaving Day rally back on the 29th. What would your comments be on that? Would you have anything you'd like to say to the people who turned up or who perhaps watched the live stream?
Well, I would like to thank them for turning up. I mean, it was on a Friday, it was on a working day. A lot of people had to take time off of work to come. A lot of people who might like to have been there didn't come because it was a working day. But we felt it was important to do it on the 29th because it was symbolic. Well, it was more than symbolic. It was the actual day we were supposed to leave. I think the original idea was we would have done it later in the evening when people would turn up, but because it had to be organised with the police, it got moved back to the afternoon. But I think it was a great success. We had many, many thousands of people turn up. It was a good, orderly crowd, just as the way it was on the 9th of December, when I had a lot of pressure on me from outside UKIP not to do that event. We did do it. Again, thousands of people turned up. Somebody said that they were all going to be bald-headed, tattooed thugs. Well, a few baldies crept in, I have to say, I have to admit that. But everyone there, again, it was a great, friendly, well-mannered, well-humoured event, and we did the same thing on the 29th with even bigger crowd, I have to say. And it was very successful. What I say to people though is it's great to do marches and rallies because it builds morale, but what really matters are elections and taking votes away from the political class. This is the only thing that they actually care about. How many people went out on the Iraq march years ago when Blair was in office? 1 million? Did it make any difference? No. Why not? Because nothing changed in Westminster. The only way you can influence things is running elections, take away their votes, lose them their seats, and if possible, win seats. Because that's the only language they understand. And as far as I'm concerned, the sooner that shower in Parliament is kicked out and replaced by new people who actually believe in their country, the better.
Absolutely. Obviously, Theresa May has submitted her, shall we call it, a request for...
Grovel? Do you want to use the word grovel?
Use the word. She's crawled her way across the European Union to deliver her letter. Basically asking for an additional extension to, was it June 20th, isn't it?
I think it was June 30th, wasn't it? End of June, I think?
Yes,
I lose track with all these changes, but I think it was the end of June. Well, I was in the chamber of the European Parliament on Wednesday, and Juncker said that they wouldn't accept an extension beyond the 12th of April, which is next week, unless it was a much longer extension. So I don't think that they're going to accept the end of June. And indeed, this whole thing is an elaborate charade anyway. Mrs May doesn't want to leave, the political class doesn't want to leave, and we are observing some kind of theatre of the absurd.
If I may, we see indicative vote after indicative vote after indicative vote, and many times on issues which the European Parliament themselves are just not that bothered about. You know, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, do we still all want to remain because we are contesting the will of the British people? Yes. Do we still want to rule out no deal? Yes. At the end of the day, that decision's not in their hands because of the way it's set up.
What's been, I predicted all this back in 2014 when I wrote a little book called The Road to Freedom. And it isn't because I'm a political genius, it's because I understand our own treacherous Conservative Party and political class and the European Union and the way it works. This whole thing has been an elaborate charade. I said if there was a referendum, if we won, they would do everything they could possibly do to delay the process, impede the process, and then overturn the process. And we are now very firmly in the overturning process. That's what they were going to do. And they expect to get away with it because of the first past the post system, voting system. Because they think however much they betray the Leavers, however much they make it absolutely obvious to everybody that their votes don't matter, that in the first past the post electoral system, people will vote Labour because they hate Tory, they'll hate Tory because they hate Labour. and we'll end up in more or less the same place we always are. It doesn't matter if the turnout goes through the floor. It doesn't matter if we have a 30%, 25% turnout in an election. They don't care because they still get elected. This is why top of our policy agenda now is reform of the voting system so that we have a proportional representation voting system, which means that people would get MPs in the proportion that they voted for. This is a political revolution that needs to happen. We need to change the voting system so that people get what they vote for. And then those MPs will know that if they don't do what they said they would do when they were elected, they can be gotten rid of at the next election. At the moment, the House of Commons is full of people in safe seats. I mean, where I live in East London, we've had a Labour MP since Keir Hardie. 1894 or something, and I think there may have been one Liberal for a brief period after the war. You could put the proverbial fence post up in a red rosette and it's going to win. You know, you could save money on MPs because you just have inanimate objects that don't get paid and don't draw a salary, because it'd be about as much difference to the democratic system if you had that. So we need to change the voting system. We need to get a fair system in, and then we can get MPs who actually do reflect what people voted for.
As a final aside then, obviously UKIP doesn't get nearly as much attention in the media as its voting percentage might indicate. However, someone who has been getting a lot of attention in the media is Nigel Farage and his so-called Brexit party, which has yet to become a party, as I understand.
Well, yes, of course, he's a celebrity. I'm not. I don't particularly want to be one, to be honest. I do what I do out of duty and necessity. Nigel could have stayed with UKIP. Nobody asked him to leave. He could now, at this point in time, be challenging me for the leadership because my term of office comes to an end on the 3rd of May. I've only stayed on a bit longer so that to get us past the local elections. But if he'd been really genuine about fighting this fight, he could have stayed with UKIP. He could have run for the election and gone again. In fact, he could have run last time. If he'd have run last time, back in last February, I wouldn't have stood because I'd know that he probably would have walked it at that point. And I wouldn't have even stood anyway. He didn't want to do that. He walked away. Brexit party. Okay. First of all, it isn't anything more than a name at this point, and I believe the name is in legal dispute as well. So I'm told. They've had two officers of the party who actually, I found this quite amusing because both of those people, Catherine Blakelock and Mick McGough, who I'd known for many years, by the way, accused me of taking the party down a far right road, and yet they both had to go because of alleged racist and anti-Semitic remarks on social media, which I found quite funny. Because so poor old Nigel now, he's got to find himself a new treasurer, but that's all right because he only needs one other officer. Because legally you only need two officers, a leader and a treasurer, to run a party. He doesn't want a national executive committee. He doesn't even want members. He wants subscribers, because what he wants is a dictatorship where he decides everything. And he's told us that he's quite open about that throughout the years. He goes, oh, if only I didn't have to worry about the NEC and the members, I could do what I need to do. Well, now we can in the Brexit party, except that it didn't run a candidate in Wales in this by-election. As far as I know, it won't have any candidates in the local elections who have declared today. And as I said, we're going to be up to about 1,400. All they're interested in is the European elections, because that gets him back in on the platform, in the limelight, and it gets his candidates, a lot of them who will be returning candidates. They get their snouts back in the Euro trough, and they can fill their pockets with the 320 euros a day, tax-free from allowances. And some of them are there Monday till Friday doing precisely that. So you'll pardon me if I don't have a lot of respect for that party.
Gerard Batten, thank you very much.